Hello, my name is Brian Caulfield. I'm a parishioner here with my wife Maria at Most Holy Trinity in Wallingford. We've been parishioners for 18 years here in Wallingford, and we have two children. You probably wonder who this is next to me. It's a statue of Venerable Michael McGivney, Venerable Father Michael J. McGivney. You probably know him as the founder of the Knights of Columbus. He was a priest of Connecticut. He grew up here in Connecticut. And on October 31st, in the cathedral up in Hartford, he's going to be beatified, made blessed through a decree from Pope Francis. So that'll be a very special and holy event, and we'll be talking about that in this video. First, I want to tell you a little bit about who Father McGivney was and what he means for us today, certainly as residents of Connecticut, and how special this event is for all of us, and we should take a particular pride in the fact that someone who grew up in our home state here is being raised to the honors of the altar. Father McGivney, Michael McGivney, was born, as I said, in Waterbury. His parents, Patrick and Mary, had come from Ireland in the early 1800s. They were escaping the potato famine at the time, as millions of immigrants, especially Irish immigrants, had during those years. Actually, they met in Waterbury. Even though they grew up in Ireland, probably one side of the mountain and the other, they never met one another in Ireland. But they met in Waterbury and were married in the church in Waterbury. And their first son was Michael. And he was born in 1852, actually August 12th, 1852. As it turns out, he was the eldest of what would become a family of 13 children. A large Irish family, and as happened often in those days, a number of the children died young, before the age of antibiotics and other remedies to some of the childhood illnesses. So 7 brothers and sisters, including Michael, grew into adulthood. Now, Michael was a very bright boy. He went to the public schools in Waterbury and graduated 2 years early. He was advanced. At age 13, he graduated, and like many boys, especially the elder boys in the family, he went to work in a factory. His father was an iron molder in a factory in Waterbury, and young Michael became a molder in the spoon factory. Not the same one as his father, but as I said, they were expected to work hard, and at that time there weren't many protections for child labor as there would be as time went on. So of course Michael was working there in a very hot and probably dank and not very well ventilated factory in Waterbury. But when he was 16, after 3 years of factory work, his father finally realized that Michael had a vocation to the priesthood, and being a good Catholic family, he and his wife Mary honored that on the encouragement of their parish priest, Father Hendricken, who was pastor of Immaculate Conception in Waterbury. Just a side note, Father Hendricken later became the first bishop of Providence, Rhode Island. So this was a very holy and very good leader. And so we saw in Michael something special, and he encouraged him and his father to think about priesthood. So Michael did, at age 16, went off to seminary, actually far away in Quebec, Canada. At that time, there were not many seminaries in the United States, and the really high-quality seminaries are recognized in French Canada, in Quebec, where they had been operating for a number of years. So Michael went up there, and then a few years later, unfortunately, his father passed away at age 48. And so it was very sad. Michael came home, and before he even took final exams in the seminary in June of that year, and he came home and was expected, to take up the work of his father to support the large family. Fortunately, the Bishop of Hartford at the time recognized his holiness and his potential as a priest, so he offered him a scholarship to go to seminary where he wouldn't have to pay tuition, and 2 of his older sisters were able to find work to help support the family. So thank God the McGivney family, did not fall into poverty as many families would who lost the breadwinner of the family. So, as I said, young Michael then went to the Baltimore Seminary, St. Mary's, down in Baltimore. It's still there, still running, and they're very honored to have Michael McGivney as a graduate. He did graduate there in 1877 and was ordained a priest in the Baltimore Cathedral, the first cathedral of the United States. And he was ordained by Archbishop Gibbons, later Cardinal Gibbons, one of the foremost prelates of the Catholic Church in the 19th century. So Michael, that was on December 22nd, 1877, and then he took the train back up to Connecticut and offered his first public Mass on Christmas Day. It's kind of an unusual first public Mass for a young priest to be doing a Christmas Day Mass. And of course, with the old Latin rite, it was quite elaborate, and so he must have learned his Latin very well, and he must have learned the rubrics very well. In fact, at his time in St. Mary's, he was the sacristan, just someone who took care of all the holy objects, all the holy vessels, and planned, the liturgies in the seminary. So we know he was very adept at doing that. His first assignment was in New Haven, Connecticut, and that was at St. Mary's Church in 1878, January of 1878. And he was ministering to an immigrant Irish Catholic population, mostly poor, and he had a great compassion for them. And they recognized him as a good and holy priest that would always respond to their needs and always understand what they were going through. And he did. Why? Because he lost his own father at a young age. He had lived through, working in a factory, so he knew a lot about the practical issues, practical problems that people faced at that time. It was a time of great anti-Catholic sentiment and bias. As we know, the United States was kind of founded and first settled by the Protestants from Europe, and here they were, all the Catholics now coming over as basically many of them poor immigrants. So they were looked down upon to a great degree by the people who had already established many generations here in America. So he knew how to face that. And while he was at St. Mary's in 1882, he gathered together what he called the go-ahead men of New Haven, the go-ahead Catholic men, who had a good ambition, to make it in the world and to provide for their families. And together he got them together at St. Mary's in the basement. And together they founded what is known as the Knights of Columbus, still going today, 138 years later. It's quite impressive, his vision. We like to call that his vision and his mission of Father McGivney in founding the Knights of Columbus. And we know that they were based on the principles of charity, unity, and fraternity. And those still inform the Knights of Columbus today. He started with a handful of about 20 men in the basement, and now the Knights of Columbus have over 2 million members throughout the world, the US, Canada, the Philippines, Mexico, recently in South Korea, and in Poland, and in Ukraine, and in France even. So the Knights of Columbus are a worldwide organization. And I should explain my connection to Father McGivney, my friend here standing next to me. I work at the headquarters of the Knights of Columbus in New Haven. You may be familiar with the building if you've driven along 95 or the connector to New Haven Hospital, Yale New Haven Hospital. You see the brown brick building with the 4 towers. That's the Knights of Columbus headquarters where I work. The 4 towers represent our 4 principles: charity, unity, fraternity, and then the 4th one added later with the 4th degree, which is patriotism. So some people call it the Tootsie Roll building because the Knights are known for their, what you call the Tootsie Roll drive, giving out little Tootsie Rolls for a donation, and all the money goes toward the handicapped or the people, especially Special Olympics children who take part in the Special Olympics. So, and part of my job at the Knights of Columbus is to help Father McGivney his cause for canonization, for sainthood. I have the title called Vice Postulator, which I know my kids, when I first got that job, they said, "A vice what? Are you like a vice president?" And I said, "Well, no, it's Vice Postulator." And what that means, we have a full-time postulator in Rome, and the postulator is the one who brings forth the cause to the Vatican, to the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. And I'm kind of the assistant, like a vice, any vice president or and one of my main jobs is to run the Father McGivney Guild at fathermcgivney.org. You're welcome to go on that site and look at it. Lots of information there about Father McGivney, the cause, the prayer for canonization. We encourage you to pray and to report any favors you receive through the intercession of Father McGivney. And if you send that in, I will see it, and it can be a favor that we get, such as helping with employment, helping with finances, helping with bringing your family members who are away from the church back to the church, and helping with family reconciliation, and helping with health issues. And these are all issues, interestingly, that Father McGivney was concerned about when he was a priest on earth. So we know he still has those interests and concerns for his people. Now that we know he's in heaven, the church is going to beatify him in 10 days from this recording on October 31st. So we know the church has recognized that what we've all known in the Knights for many years, that Father McGivney is in heaven as an intercessor, and now is being recognized as a blessed. So we'll talk a little bit about how he intercedes in the miracle that Father McGivney has, which got him to beatification. One of my main jobs is to look for a miracle through the intercession of Father McGivney. And we are very fortunate that we received a number of years ago a report of a possible miracle, and I helped investigate that. It was a child in the womb to a couple in Tennessee at the time that he was a couple of weeks in utero, gestation. He was diagnosed first with Down syndrome, trisomy 21. And of course the parents were a good Catholic couple. The father, in fact, is a Knight of Columbus and an insurance agent for the Knights of Columbus throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. So when they got news about the Down syndrome, realizing unfortunately that many children today with that diagnosis are aborted, they were very happy to be able to say, we will trust God with whatever he sends us. And this child, in fact, will be a blessing to our family, because they knew other families with a Down syndrome child, and the child really brought love into that family and taught the other children compassion and care at a very young age, and to give love and to receive love. A few weeks after that diagnosis of Down syndrome, the family received really devastating news. This was a fatal condition that was diagnosed called fetal hydrops. Basically, that's when the fetus, the unborn baby, fills with fluid, and there's really no way to treat that in utero. So the doctors, who are very expert doctors, neonatal experts, not at a Catholic hospital, at a secular hospital down in Nashville, and they said, the child has pretty much zero chance of living, and they advised abortion, unfortunately. And of course, again, the family, the couple declined abortion, saying, we will hold on to this child as long as God gives us the life of this child. So I'm just choking up a little thinking about, my encounter with this family, a very holy family, a very good family. So they got that diagnosis, and then it happened that Daniel, the family's name is Daniel and Michelle Shackle, down in Nashville, Tennessee. As an agent, he had gotten an incentive trip, for good agents who were, doing well in their business. And he was due to fly to Fatima in Portugal. And his wife Michelle got permission from the doctor to travel, with her pregnancy, with her high-risk pregnancy. So when they were over in Fatima, they were at a mass in Fatima, and the reading that day just happened to be, or probably not by coincidence, probably by God's providence, the reading from the Gospel of John, where the official comes to Jesus saying that his son is ill unto death, and asks Jesus to come and heal him. And Jesus, so impressed with the faith of this official, simply says, "Go, your son lives, your son will live." And when Daniel and Michelle heard that reading and that particular line, that words of Jesus, they looked at one another and said, "Wow, could this be a message to us that our child is going to live?" And as they look back later, they realized that was the moment that the child was healed, because Michelle felt within herself something different, something lifted from the child in her womb. So when they got back to Tennessee, they had a regularly scheduled 4 days later ultrasound, and there was a doctor who had not seen Michelle before doing the ultrasound or reading the ultrasound, and had no idea that this child had been given no chance to live. Remarked that to Michelle, "Oh, this is one of the most beautiful babies I've ever seen. I can see the child has Down syndrome, but otherwise very beautiful." And Michelle said, "Well, what about the high drops, doctor? We were given no chance." And this particular doctor said, "Oh, are you the mother who, she had heard about it in, discussion among the other doctors." So she called her regular doctor in, and they confirmed it, that there was no high drops. It was completely gone. And there was no medical treatment, there was no medication, there was nothing that was given that would explain this healing other than this was miraculous. And in fact, the doctors, working in a secular hospital, began to call this their miracle baby. They almost adopted this baby spiritually. They were just so impressed, first of all, by the faith of Daniel and Michelle, and second of all, by this amazing event that they had no explanation for. So the baby was born May 15th, 2015. No high drops, of course, had the Down syndrome, and also had a condition called coarctation of the aorta, which is common among Down syndrome children, I understand. And that would, 7 weeks later, that would need surgery to correct it. It's when the aorta is kind of narrow and kind of impedes the blood flow. So they had to do like as the doctors call it, a correction or a fix, taking another vein from another part of the body, putting it there so the aorta would be of normal width. So there's little Mikey, as the boy is now affectionately called. He's 5 years old now, healthy, for the most part, as can be, and very active and very loved. I don't think I mentioned that they have 12 other children in this family. As it so happens, Father McGivney was the oldest of 13 children, and the miracle baby is the youngest of 13 children to the Shackle family. Just one of the many so-called coincidences, but if we see it through the lens of faith, we can see God's hand, God's providence in this. And I think, that Father McGivney was obviously personally involved in this, choosing this family and choosing this child for the miracle that opened the way for him to be beatified. And as I mentioned, he will be beatified. He will be Blessed Michael McGivney on October 31st. It'll be in the Cathedral of St. Joseph in Hartford. And unfortunately, the Knights of Columbus would love to invite, 1,700 or 2,000 people to the cathedral, as it would be able to hold. But with the COVID restrictions, as we all know, on indoor religious events, now it's at 200. And so that includes the cardinals that'll be there, That includes the bishops, that includes the priests, that includes the deacons. I don't even think Father Gutierrez and Father Mendoza are invited, unfortunately. But there are other events, and there is going to be a live telecast. So first, just let me mention on EWTN, the Eternal Word television network, the Catholic network on cable, they will be televising 3 events over 3 days related to this beatification. And it'll also be live streamed on kfc.org/beatification if you don't have cable. So on Friday, October 30th, there will be a vigil, not a mass, but a prayer vigil with evening prayer for the priests of the Archdiocese of Hartford. And this will be at St. Mary's Church in New Haven. That's where Father McGivney had founded the Knights of Columbus in 1882. And that's where the remains of Father McGivney, the earthly remains, are in a sarcophagus in the church. So that prayer vigil will be at 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. That'll be televised on EWTN and live streamed on the Knights of Columbus website. There will also be, of course, the Mass of Beatification on Saturday, October 31st, and that will be at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on EWTN. That's when you'll be able to see the Shackle family. They're coming with Mikey, the Miracle Boy, and I think 9 of their 13 children. A couple of them are grown and off, in the world on their own. But they're bringing all the children who are still living at home. And they will process with a major relic of Father McGivney, which will be venerated. So that will be on October 31st at 11 a.m. And then on Sunday, All Saints' Day, as it happens, appropriate, although there will be a Mass of Thanksgiving for the beatification of Father McGivney, again now at St. Mary's Church in New Haven, and that will be at noontime, 12 noon, and that'll also be televised and live streamed. So I should also tell you that earlier, I don't think it's an event that's open to the public, but there will be an official ribbon cutting. Many of you may know the Knights of Columbus Museum in New Haven, a beautiful building, beautiful facility. And on November 1st, in a morning ceremony, that will be renamed the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center. Very appropriate. So there'll be a ribbon cutting by our Supreme Knight, our Supreme Chaplain, Carl Anderson, our Supreme Knight, Archbishop Laurie, our Supreme Chaplain. So I'm not sure if that will be televised, but I'm sure we'll have something on YouTube later on the Knights of Columbus YouTube channel. So those are 3 events. We have the prayer vigil on Friday. We have the actual beatification on Saturday. That'll be at the cathedral I mentioned in Hartford. And then on Sunday, November 1st, there will be the Mass of Thanksgiving. So I also want to mention, if you want to know more, if you want to hear from me more, if you have questions about the beatification, about the miracle, anything having to do with Father McGivney, the Knights of Columbus, the fathers at the Most Holy Trinity are nice enough. They've scheduled a Zoom meeting, and that will be on Wednesday, October 28th at 7 p.m. on the, I guess Father will be showing on the YouTube now the link to that meeting, and I will be there, and I'll be presenting a little bit about this event, which at that time will be only a day or 2 away. And there's our lovely train that the priest always welcome, reminds them to pray at 3 in the morning, I think, right, Father? So anyway, so that Zoom meeting, looking very much forward to it, and all parishioners are invited to come, and your questions are very much welcome. And I urge you and invite you also to go to what we call the Father McGivney Guild website. It's fathermcgivney.org. You can sign up for the Guild. Just click Join the Guild button there on the home page and put your information in, And as a member of the Guild, you'll receive a quarterly newsletter, which I prepare every 3 months. And your intentions, this is a great benefit, your intentions will be remembered at a weekly Mass offered by Father O'Donnell, who was the first vice postulator of this cause and kind of broke ground on the Father McGivney cause. So again, fathermcgivney.org, go and join. Also there you'll see lots of information on Father McGivney. You'll have an opportunity to see the prayer for canonization. I encourage you to pray that. Ask Father McGivney for favors, for his intercession. If you receive any kind of favor, please go back to the website and there's a button there that says report favors. I personally get to see them. I'm very honored and very humbled and very inspired by the reports of favors. And they're not all, the kind that the Vatican would recognize as miracles. We understand that most of Father McGivney's work is in the everyday life of people. It may not be qualified to the high standards of a miracle, but it certainly is understood by people who pray to Father McGivney, that he's involved in their lives. And just in closing, I want to say, how Father McGivney has affected my life and our family. Since I've been a vice postulator for the past 9 years, I've gotten to know him a lot better. I've gotten to know him as someone who walks with the people who are devoted to him. You really feel the touch of Father McGivney on your shoulder sometimes when, especially in hard times. He was a priest who dealt with parishioners who were going through very hard times. And now in our COVID environment with the pandemic and so much financial problems and sort of social unrest and division in our culture, all that was known by Father McGivney. I think he's a blessed of our time, and I think he is especially, this is good news in 2020. I think we need good news in 2020. There's been so much, if not bad news, just sad news that's been going on, and so many people are suffering. So I think we can look as Catholics to Father McGivney as an intercessor in these very difficult times. He can lift us up, he can encourage us, and he can give us that hope, that supernatural hope that we need as Catholic men and women today in the Church. So thank you.